Perhaps this is the easiest and cheapest beehive to make in modern human history, yet it has the features of the very best hives. The idea for its creation came only after a deep dive into the centuries-old history of beekeeping. Classic methods of making hives from logs were carefully analyzed, and a modern, high-tech method was born. Today's apiaries are bee farms focused on quantity rather than quality. Often the honey produced there is even dangerous. Bee colonies lived freely in tree hollows for many millions of years. Our ancestors knew this and practiced wild-hive beekeeping to create similar conditions for bees. As forests declined, bees were moved into wooden hives. With the rise of boards, greed, profit-seeking, and laziness, labor-intensive wooden hives were replaced by simpler wooden boxes known as beehives. In other words, they imposed an unnatural environment. Bees were also given wax foundation, making the honeycombs half artificial. This video is about how it was possible to create a modern hive in the shape of a log, which will surely allow beekeeping to be called eco-friendly. Thanks to the simplicity and low cost of making such hives, now anyone who wants can get eco-friendly honey. For your family and children, you no longer have to order real honey from Siberia for a fortune. We immediately set a goal to make the cheapest hives in several ways that would be suitable for healthy eco-beekeeping, but not all of them turned out to be simple in practice. Ultimately, we found a very simple solution. Viewers of the Yasha Kosyak Songs channel will be the first to learn this important information. Be sure to share it with your friends and loved ones. These aren't beehives made from used plastic beer kegs, which hint at the decline of humanity and a post-apocalypse. Let's review everything step by step, briefly and informatively. How did we get here? Hello everyone, my friend Dimitri decided to become a beekeeper and encouraged me to try it too. Dimitri loves everything eco-friendly and natural. If it's a house, then only a wild log cabin. If it's a stove, then a real Russian one with a big sleeping platform. After diving into the subject, my friend now believes that only hives and skeps are the most proper and natural for eco-beekeeping. The basis of this approach is the idea that human intervention in natural processes should be minimal. After building the house, my friend had enough leftover logs, so he didn't need to go to the forest. Personally, I like the skep hive option for its low cost and apparent simplicity. Modern hives are shaped like parallelepipes. Most likely that's because they're made from straight materials like boards.
Wow, that's something special.
A groove. We'll likely choose this. What's it called? Heart.
Heart.
We'll also follow our hearts here.
Forgive me, my dear, but we're going to strike right at the heart.
Boards are costly, making the beehives expensive as well. The cylindrical shape, I believe, is much more natural for them, and a log is probably the cheapest lumber. The first log split quite easily because it turned out to be rotten. I had to work harder with the second one. Dimitri suggested doing everything pretty much the way beekeepers did in ancient times, meaning the beekeepers who were the ancestors of modern beekeepers. In ancient times, people relied on nature for help.
Basically, like those tribes, the ancient native ones.
Humanity didn't know about electric or gasoline tools yet, so they used the power of water, wind, and fire. To create the first hive from a log, they decided to use the power of fire. Moreover, they remembered well the video by lawyer Yegorov, where he skillfully burned large diameter holes in logs. Yegorov used a long hand auger to create initial channels for spreading fire, achieving the effect of a finished candle. We didn't have such an auger. Besides, we thought that ancient beekeepers might not have had such a tool either, so to create the fire channel, we decided to split the log lengthwise first. Maybe our genetic memory told us how to do everything. We decided not to waste the released energy, and Dimitri quickly prepared our main Belarusian dish, VO. Nobody really knows, but they still talk. In reality, the burning process didn't go as we expected. Nothing went as planned. Instead of a beehive, we ended up with fiery furniture belonging to lawyer Yegorov. Even though I almost always use the bare minimum of tools in my YouTube projects, there are still critics who think I actually have a lot of tools. That's why I wanted even more to find a method for making a simple beehive that would require almost no tools. Just an axe, a hammer, a chisel, maybe something else that even every beginner craftsman has. In short, tools that even a craftsman from ancient times could have had. Then it became clear the fire had a mind of its own, and if you don't stop its work, there won't be any chance left to get a hive out of this particular log. We realized that with trial and error, you can master burning wood cavities perfectly. But for that, you might use up all the logs your friend has stored, and that's an unaffordable luxury. The next day was rainy, so after calling the Log Hives, we decided to wait. I decided to do some magic again with my favorite building material, a pack of 3 cm thick Penoplex comfort sheets. I almost always have it on hand now. I give a few sheets some roughness using a saw blade for wood that's been detached from its handle. I cut off a piece of plaster fiberglass mesh. I use polyurethane adhesive foam to attach the mesh to the sheet. I try to bend the insulation sheet, which is strong under pressure but brittle when bent. Last year, when making our plunge pool mini pool this way, I was able to bend the sheets almost with my bare hands, but this time, a much smaller bending radius was required, so hand strength alone is no longer enough. I've been thinking about making a Penoplex bender for a long time, and now its time has come. I decided to use a good old pallet for the base. Pallets in modern do-it-yourself are one of the main symbols of folk creativity on all continents, so the pallet had no choice but to help me out as well. I quickly realized that I would need more, to be continued. Only now do I understand why some mysterious force made me keep the used Chinese chopsticks instead of throwing them away. With their help, I was able to create the necessary gap to move the Penoplex sheet with the attached mesh. I felt the convenience of the tool from the very first minutes of using it. The attached mesh prevents a destructive crack from forming on the outer side of the sheet, and Penoplex GIP allows you to easily crumple the inner side of the sheet with minimal effort. This makes it possible to roll up this rather strong but brittle material even into a roll. Next, I send the Penoplex roll for a short hold under the table brace. Now the material is as pliable as clay. The Penoplex sheets have an L edge. In one spot, it now needs to be trimmed a bit with a utility knife. I gently and thoroughly apply the adhesive foam, closing the circle. Again, a short wait. I glue another small piece of fiberglass mesh to the joint. I try to make the workpiece as round as possible. I always have scraps of Penoplex left over from previous projects, and by shaping one of them into a circle, I managed to get a Penoplex block that's almost perfectly shaped, which makes me very happy. The second scrap secures the result even better. The mesh is no longer needed. It will come in handy for bending the next sheets. I realize that the revolution in hive beekeeping is now just around the corner. I just need to solve a couple more minor issues. I'm with Dimitri again. You see the downside, longitudinal cracks. We're thinking about how to deal with the inevitable longitudinal cracks in dry logs. Realizing that commanding the free, powerful force of fire isn't our strong suit, we decide to use modern electric and gasoline tools. The goal is still the same, to make a cheap log hive for eco beekeeping. This time we're using only household tools like chainsaws with standard not very long bars. We decide to prepare a 1.2 meter long log to break it into manageable segments. Dimitri soon realized that removing the log's core all at once, as seen in short YouTube videos, wouldn't work for him. Inserting the blade into the log this way is very dangerous and can cause saw kickback. That's why I asked my friend not to neglect safety precautions and to use a helmet. Dimitri had gone through building a log house, so he had experience using a chainsaw. But we already understood that we'd have to tinker with the log hives even with a chainsaw and the skills to use it. The animals had already sensed that this was a place they could live. But this, brother, is not for you. We transfer the measurements to this side. The short segments into which we divided our deck still turned out to be longer than the chainsaw bar, which caused additional difficulties. We had to do everything again on the other side.
A dangerous crack.
Despite the markings made, Dimitri was unable to achieve a precise alignment of the opposing cuts, so he had to spend a lot of time on it. Hooray! Oh, finally! When trying to remove the core of the log in this way, the sawbar works under the pressure of longitudinal sawing, and longitudinal sawing requires a chain with a special sharpening.
So you don't cut too deep again. As I understand it for the Japanese,
What is it?
what aroma, what deliciousness. They say they make baths out of this. Baths, they take baths, yes, in pine sawdust.
Chains for longitudinal sawing are rarely used. The sharpening angle of such chains is 9 degrees instead of 30, which is standard for crosscut chains. We unintentionally ended up where resharpening the chain is time consuming and a hassle, but buying a special one also takes time and costs more. Even in fast forward, my friend's work still looks lively. And only the changing shadow cast by Dimitri's house hints that there were pauses, both for cooling down, refueling the tool, and sharpening the chain. It became clear that if my friend didn't ruin his style, then the plan to get one of the cheapest beehives should work out. While finishing the inner surface of the log hive, I was already imagining the huge potential hidden in using foam board for making artificial log hives. Dimitri began the second log hive segment while I'm finishing what the fire left incomplete. My friend also hoped that we would be able to make hives without using mechanical tools. And by the way, our Belarus is a zone of risky farming. The next day, Dimitri was busy with his work and I continued my research. Keeping bees in log hives and beehives was preceded by Wild-Hive beekeeping, called Bortnichestvo. This is a historical type of beekeeping that involves harvesting honey and wax from bees living in tree hollows. While I was easily working for the benefit of all eco-beekeepers on the planet, my wife was busy with the hard work, without which a bench made of traditional wood could soon cease to exist. Natural wood requires constant maintenance. Hollows used as hives can have a natural origin. They are specially hollowed out in thick trees at a height of 5 to 15 meters. The log's second segment is even straighter than the first. People who practice beekeeping in tree hollows are called Bortniks. Narrow, long openings are used for collecting honey. The preferred types of trees for beekeeping are pine, linden, and oak. So pine log hives are just right, while foam plastic ones are simply fantastic. A hive can live up to 150 years. About once a decade it needs to be cleaned. In ancient times, ownership rights applied to hive trees, so they were marked with various signs, banners. According to the Russkaya Pravda, a collection of legal norms of Kievan Rus dated 2016, anyone who destroyed a hive banner was required to pay a fine of 12 grivnas. The same amount was paid for killing a serf. For damaging a hive belonging to a smurd, offenders were fined 2 grivnas, and for damaging a princely hive, 3 grivnas. The Lithuanian Statute of 1588 recommended that landowners not cultivate fields near hive lands, since even for accidental damage to a tree with a hive, a significant penalty was imposed on the culprit. When making such log hives, you don't need to be as strong a fellow as the Belarusian hero Dmitry. I cut alkali-resistant plaster mesh and mixed the insulation compound. Now, even women who were previously discouraged by the labor-intensive process can take up beekeeping. Only the bare minimum of hand tools is required. The risk of injury is minimal, unless you try to commit harakiri with a spatula. I apply a basic reinforcing layer to the Penoplex blanks. Penoplex is an insulation material made from extruded polystyrene foam, or extruded polystyrene for short. Why extruded polystyrene? Why not make it out of fiberboard, for example? Penoplex is a very effective insulation material. Just 3 cm of Penoplex has the same thermal performance as 17 cm of dry wood. So in that hive, bees won't get cold in winter or hot in summer. Making a hive like this is really simple. Just take it and put it together. With a wide spatula, I give it a final smoothness, which isn't really necessary. Penoplex doesn't absorb or let moisture through, so there won't be any mold in the hives. I don't have professional plastering skills, but the work is going well. Dmitry's new day starts with sharpening the chain again and the pleasant struggle with the part of the future honey hive that he didn't finish last time. Usually, the Belarusian summer isn't very hot, but now it's become very hot and you just want to hide in the shade from the heat. My friend likes to collect antique tools for working on the hive using ancient techniques. There's no need to make anything up, the texture. Everyone works. I've often wondered where the desire to work and help goes in children as they grow up. Dmitry is still lucky for now. He doesn't go without help.
What are you filming, eh? Are you filming?
An electric sander and a friend's hands quickly give the log a completely new look. After sanding hundreds of square meters of his house's walls, this is easy for Dmitry. Metal nails have been known to humanity since the Bronze Age, so we confidently use them in our primitive log. Next, everything unnecessary is removed. Dmitry cuts only with a handsaw. Found clay right next to a friend's house foundation. Clay is completely harmless for bees. The use of clay in beekeeping has been known in some cultures since ancient times. This building material, proven over centuries, helps us fix many flaws.
You said that beautifully, just like you. In Chinese, this technology...
That's why our ancestors, the ancient Belarusian beekeepers, could very well have used it. Genetic memory hasn't gone anywhere. Dmitry gave me an ancient drill. A forest section might have one owner, but its bee trees could belong to someone else. Under Lithuanian law, stealing honey from a bee tree was punishable by death. In Polish law, stealing bees from a bee tree also meant death by hanging. Oh, the times. Oh, the morals. In the early 16th century, the forests around Moscow were thoroughly cut down. Nevertheless, all the beeswax supplied to Europe at that time came from Muscovy. The collection of tribute for the exploitation of state-owned beekeeping lands in just the Putyvl district brought the Moscow state more than 2,000 poods of honey per year. The area of active wild-hive beekeeping shifted southward throughout the 16th and 17th centuries, accompanying the development of the fields. After frame hives were invented and developed, wild-hive beekeeping couldn't compete with apiary beekeeping because making wild hives was too labor-intensive. By the 19th century, honey was no longer the only sweetener and raw material for alcoholic beverages, and the introduction of kerosene reduced the demand for candles made from wax. As a result, even apiary beekeeping became unprofitable. I hope that the widespread adoption of foam hive logs can change everything. We rushed making holes for the dowels to join the hive log parts. Hammering in nails to mark holes on the second part before drilling the first would have made it easier. The experience comes from hard mistakes. To be continued. So everything turned out exactly this way. Nagel is German and Dutch for a wooden peg. Where are they?
Well, since...
Somewhere here. In the wooden log house of Dmitry Nageli, they were actively used during construction. Apparently, that's why he insisted on joining the parts of the log together. Exactly so. At that moment, I clearly realized that my experiments in creating much lighter logs are simply necessary for humanity to make life easier. Alongside his dream of a wooden house for his family, Dmitry also wanted a Russian stove in it, modernized for global stove trends and much higher efficiency. Dmitry's brother Vladimir helped make his dream possible. Vladimir is a stove maker of the highest qualification. He willingly tackles complex projects that demand advanced stove-making knowledge. The stove maker gladly assists homeowners who have been deceived by imposters and swindlers.
We're going to take down this old stove, which... it doesn't heat at all. People keep firing it up, using a lot of fuel in order to...
Dmitry is always happy to occasionally help his brother with this tough work.
But there was no foundation at all. The stove is ready now.
I know how hard it is to find a real craftsman when you really need one. That's why I'm sharing Vladimir the stove maker's contact info below. At the first opportunity, I continued. Connecting the Penoplex deck parts, I wondered if these solutions might matter more to humanity than Elon Musk's. When connecting the steps of future Martian rockets, only a few will be able to fly to Mars, and it's still unknown when that will happen. But anyone who wants to will be able to make such a deck right after watching this video. Who knows, maybe such hives will even be built on Mars. I'm adjusting the rubber spatula that I use to apply the wood texture to the garden sofa made of Penoplex. Many beekeepers like to decorate their hives. Here, when it comes to finishing, it's a wide open field. On the basic reinforcing layer of such a hive body, as with a house facade insulated with Penoplex, you can use many types of store-bought or nearly free homemade finishing coatings. I always use the cheapest tile adhesive. I know that Penoplex has been actively used for insulating human dwellings for decades. It's suitable for insulating walkways, floors, walls, ceilings, attics, roofs, plinths, and balconies. That is, it's used for insulating houses along the perimeter. The absence of corners in log hives further reduces the chance of freezing to almost zero. That's why I have virtually no doubts about the effectiveness of such log hives. Then I repeat the application of the basic reinforcing layer on the inside. Working in a log hive this size isn't as comfortable as using a foam board mini pool, but I can still use the spatula easily. I know that rectangular hives made of extruded polystyrene are not a new invention. They have been produced industrially for a long time, but when you look at their high price, it becomes clear that the companies producing them are primarily aiming to profit at the expense of beekeepers. The cost of these homemade hives is minimal. We'll calculate it later. I put the parts on spacers to improve airflow and speed up drying. In my area, the clay is grayer than Dimitri's, just to cut off all the arguments of self-proclaimed couch ecologists right away. On the inside, I apply a layer of the most natural clay as a finish. People have only recently accepted that Penoplex is safe for construction, as it emits nothing and doesn't decompose. To avoid giving traditional beekeepers reason to question the basic reinforcing layer, which mainly contains sand, mesh, cement, and neutral additives, I carefully cover everything with a layer of pure clay. In ancient times, bees were kept in clay hives, somewhere I can't recall, so everything is fine. Now it's time for the roof. Making it is also no problem thanks to modern technology. In classic hives, beekeepers attach wax foundation to wooden frames, and wax foundation is an artificial base for building honeycombs. It's a thin rectangular sheet of wax with the bottoms of the cells pressed into it. To cut costs, it often includes non-natural additives. The purpose of using foundation is nothing more than the race for the amount of honey. The deceived bees are puzzled, wondering when they managed to build all of this. Their program gets disrupted, and they immediately switch to honey. I just needed a few natural wood slats. We learned that bees begin to dance and build wax honeycombs on these planks. A few pieces of composite rebar were also useful. A bee colony is a society. What can a deceived society produce? Nothing. Focusing on quantity reduces quality, and poor quality honey can be harmful. In log hives, bees live just as they did in nature for millions of years. Log hive honey is completely natural, rich in bee bread made by bees from nectar and flowers, and sealed in natural honeycombs, without the use of artificial wax foundation. I decided to make the base for the log hive using the time-tested method of foam board strips. I had a 5 cm thick piece of extruded polystyrene foam, though 3 cm would have sufficed. We avoided cutting side openings in the wooden log hives because their many longitudinal cracks would further weaken them. Honey can also be removed through the back cover. My hive's openings follow the classic method. I just mark them out to make them more or less even. Penoplex resists water absorption and penetration. In log hives, there's probably enough natural ventilation due to the large number of cracks. In my hive, I decided to make ventilation in the top cover right away. Making a log hive is something you do in your spare time. It's hard to call it work, since you have to wait several times for the mixture to set. Making 20 or 30 log hives at once fully optimizes the process. For example, the first day we glue the foam board, plaster all the log hives from the outside. The next day we apply the decorative exterior finish and plaster the inside, and so on. In just a few days, you can establish a real apiary this way. For ventilating the underroof space of the hive, I install inexpensive store-bought grills. Their slats block water from sideways rain, while the fine mesh keeps out pests. The widespread replacement of tree beekeeping with hive beekeeping was due to deforestation and happened in the 17th century. To save the bees from extermination, beekeepers began placing hives near their homes. The advantage of keeping bees in log hives is that the hive itself resembles the natural conditions where bees once lived on their own. Don't judge the finish too harshly. This was the first thing that came to mind. You can skip it entirely or go all out and make everything top-notch. Become an elite beekeeper and gain access to oligarchic circles. Supply honey to Rubliovka mansions, build connections, find investments, set up something like a candle factory and never work again. The extra cutout round piece of roofing turned out to be useful as the bottom. Now the bottom is higher than the base and will always stay dry. I'm painting the roof a tile color. White, blue, and yellow are the best colors to attract bees misled by artificial apiaries. We do everything honestly, so the color of the hive box, yellow, blue, or white, doesn't matter. And the darker ones seem to be fine. I use the cheapest exterior paint, adding colorants for the colors I want. Starting with white, I'm emphasizing the wood texture. My wife helped me highlight the base's texture. After painting, I coat everything with a slightly tinted acrylic varnish for stone, brick, plaster, and concrete. Believe me, the strength turns out to be more than enough. I bathe in a slightly bigger tub like this. It's called a foam plastic plunge tub. I almost forgot, of course, the tub needs an entrance. Maybe even several. We'll figure this out as we go. And a bee landing strip is also needed. I also cover the bottom and lid with natural clay. I felt the convenience from the very first seconds of transportation. The assembly is simple and easy. Don't judge me too harshly for my artistic skills, or rather for the lack thereof. You might be able to make it look much nicer. This kind of hive is lighter than a wooden one, but it still has a considerable weight. This is the first prototype of an artificial hive, which can be improved and refined further. Here's how I set up the ventilation. Its intensity can be changed by adding or removing plugs. I don't know yet if additional bottom ventilation will be needed, but it's very easy to add. I'll state the cost based on materials used. The deck only used two 3cm Penoplex comfort sheets. A bit more. I used up about 5-6 square meters of leftover plaster fiberglass mesh, less than a bag of insulation mix, a couple of kilograms of tile adhesive, and about 200 grams of paint. The rest are minor details, that's all. Even the stingiest beekeeper will see this is free, easy, and fast. The hive can be built from one foam sheet or several, and its diameter can be easily increased. Even if you ever decide to stop beekeeping, these hives will simply remain as decorations in your yard. The broken dowels have been replaced with new ones. You need to use this continuation. Following cold feng shui, we prepare the wooden hives and cut the slats accordingly. Subtitles. See you next time. Even the hive lid, which we make using ancient technology, Dmitry marks according to the ancient method. He saws and chops exclusively using muscle power. good to be a strongman. Dimitri can be called a modern herbalist. Perhaps because of his passion for a healthy lifestyle, it's very hard to keep up with him at work. My friend tries to draw energy from the surrounding nature.
Of course, we can put his hands there, cover it up with a bundle so they don't stick anything on.
My channel, Yasha Koshiak's Songs, focuses on ultralight, simple construction solutions that even people with health issues from drinking, weak women, and children can handle. To make sure the bees immediately understand where to start, it's best to coat the slats with natural wax.
You soak it if you remember. To be continued.
They lured the wood in. It gives honey.
No, just holes in the house, just drilling holes.
My friend still doesn't know about my experiments. That's why it's very interesting to see what someone used to all natural things will say about such a deck. You can see the reaction yourself. Confusion and excitement overlap.
It's beautiful.
Dimitri didn't waste any time either. He managed to equip the ancient hive with legs, completely in the style of old beekeepers. To be continued. Unlike rectangular hives, which are made as bright as possible for tricked bees, log hives need to be camouflaged instead. I can't wait to get started on this useful activity, so we're hurrying to the forest with all this. We find a suitable spot and begin creating a forest apiary. A hive made from Penoplex lasts over 50 years, which is the minimum lifespan for extruded polystyrene foam according to the manufacturer.